Hi, I'm Debbie and this is from one of my favourite movies of all time. Today I'm going to show you how to make this very simple castle cake and icing model of Belle. I've started by covering my board with a green sugar paste. Now if you didn't want to do that, you can buy coloured boards, but if you were going to cover it, just dampen the board down with some cooled boiled water, roll your sugar paste out onto the work surface and then just pop it on top and trim it with a sharp knife. So I've got my cakes here and I've used a 6-inch round tin for my cakes, and I've baked 3 separate layers because I want to get a nice height. Now I'm going to cut the top with a cake leveler, fantastic tool, but if you don't have one then just use a serrated knife from the kitchen. This way I know I'm going to get all 3 exactly the same size. So I'm going to use a single thick card just to pop my first cake on. And this is going to make it easy to lift it onto the board once we've covered the cakes in sugar paste. So I'm just going to stick it down lightly with some buttercream. Now I always turn mine up the other way. Secret to this is when you're popping your buttercream on the top, it makes it easier to spread it on the top without all the crumbs coming off the surface. So you don't want to put too much buttercream in between because it can make it very hard to cover your cake. So I'm going to put our next layer on the top, just give it a little push down. Now if you wanted to, you could put jam inside as well, but today I'm just going to do the buttercream. Now if you have trouble spreading, my buttercream is quite firm, but I like it quite firm because it just gives a neater finish when I come to cover it with the sugar paste. If it's too soft, it can squish out of the sides of your cake, and then it makes it quite difficult to cover. So just give it a nice push down. And now we're ready to cover it. So I'm just going to pop it on top of another card. And we're going to make some room for our sugar paste. Now I've got this beautiful pale yellow sugar paste. I think this is perfect for Belle's castle. So you want to give your sugar paste a nice knead. And then I'm just going to pop it to one side. And we're going to just crumb coat. So I've got some of the same buttercream, and you can see it's a bit runnier. So I've just added some water to my buttercream. It just makes it easier to do a nice thin crumb coat all the way round. Now shapes like this are really quite tricky to cover. So you really need to make sure you've got enough sugar paste. Don't try and do it with too little and then try and pull it down the sides. So I'm going to use 1 kilo of sugar paste. Let's bring our sugar paste back in. Light dusting of icing sugar. and then keep turning. So I'm going to use my rolling pin just to do a very quick measurement on the top. I would say I've got to roll it out the size of my rolling pin, so we're very nearly there. So that's about right. If you've got a smoother hand, just run it over the top of the sugar paste. If you don't have one of those, just use the palm of your hand. And then I'm just going to very quickly pick it up on the rolling pin and pop it over the top. Now with a tall shape, you want to concentrate on the top edge. This is where it's going to start to crack. So just the palm of your hands, rub it all the way round. And then just working your way down the side of the cake. What you want to try to avoid is pulling it. Don't pull it down. This will just tear your sugar paste. And don't worry too much. A shape like this is always really quite tricky to cover, but just remember we're going to be putting some beautiful decoration onto our princess castle, so we've got ways of hiding the odd marks where you're not too happy with it. So I'm using the smoother all the way around the sides. This will give you a nice professional finish to your cake. And then I'm just going to press down all the way round. And start by cutting away the big pieces of excess. Now I'm going to give it one last go with my smoother all the way round. And then we're ready to pop it onto our board. Now if you use a little bit of buttercream just to stick it down onto the board, so then if you're travelling it at all, you know that cake's not going to go anywhere. And then I'm just going to move it off of the board, and this is why I've got it on a little single thick card, because I can easily transfer it to the board. And now we're ready to start decorating it. So we're going to start by putting the top of our castle around. Now the easiest way I find to do this is to use some ribbon or some string and just measure it around that top edge. Otherwise you have no idea how long you need to roll it out. And I'm still going to use sugar paste to do the top edge. It still works really well. If your sugar paste is very soft, you could add some hardener to it, like a CMC or Tylo powder. So I'm going to start by rolling nice long sausage, and then just use the rolling pin to thin it all out. I probably could have done with a bigger rolling pin. So I'm just going to go all the way along. Now I think it works on the top because I leave it quite chunky. So I'm probably rolling it, I would say, to roughly probably 3 millimeters in thickness. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to show you 2 different ways. I'm going to use the multi-ribbon cutter, so I know that I'm going to get a nice long strip completely even. Obviously, if you don't have one of these tools, just use a palette knife. It's absolutely fine. But if you've got the tools, it does make life easier. So we're going to cut that away. There, look at that. So I'm going to cut it the same size as the ribbon. It's probably still going to end up too long because sugar paste tends to stretch. Now I'm using a fantastic tool by FMM, and this is a straight frill cutter, and it's got this lovely pattern to it. But again, if you don't have one of these at home, then you can see I have this other one here. So if you've got a circle cutter, you just need to cut away a pattern. So I would cut along the pattern exactly the same way. But I'm going to use this fantastic tool. So you need to make sure, when you're using a tool like this, you want to make sure this is very straight before you begin cutting. And then just press it into the sugar paste. You can see I'm giving it a little wiggle. And then pull it all away. And then we're going to move along. Again, make sure you've got it as straight as you possibly can, and try and join it up with the last one that you cut. Nice firm pressure. I'm just going to give it a wiggle. Oopsie, it's a bit tough there. And then we just pull that away. So I think both look equally as good. So whichever way you choose to do it, it will still look fantastic. And then just to finish it at the top, I've got this heart plunger cutter, but I'm not going to use the plunger. I'm just going to push it into the icing. So I'm just finishing off marking the hearts. There we go. So now we're ready for the tricky part, wrapping it around our cake. So I'm going to use some edible glue. Don't get it everywhere, like me. And just paint around the top edge of the cake. Now, don't use too much glue because it has the opposite effect. It actually makes it slippery. We can always add a little bit more once it's around the edge of the cake. Now this is going to make our castle. So I'm just going to run the palette knife underneath before I try to lift it. Just make sure it's not stuck to the worktop. So you kind of need to decide at this point what is going to be the front and what is going to be the back. So I think it's nice to have the join at the back where you can't see it too much. Now if you've rolled this too thin in the first place, you'll find this quite hard. Oh, look at that. To wrap it around the top. And you couldn't get more perfect than that. Now before I press it down completely, I'm just going to turn the cake, and you might find that you just need to lift it up in places. You want to try and get it as straight as you possibly can. And you can normally see this just by turning the cake around. And I'm just using my hands just to lift it up very slightly. Just push it out at the top if it tends to fold in. So we want to try and have the join at the back, if possible. Now, if yours slightly overlaps, I mean, that was perfect, then you just need to cut a little bit off with a palette knife before you stick it down. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Now we want to finish the underneath off. If you wanted to, you could leave it as it is, but I just like to show you options of what you could do. So I'm going to get some more of the same colour sugar paste, and we're going to roll a nice long, very thin sausage just to go around the edge. So the easiest way to do this, start it off with your hands to begin with. And then if you've got a smoother, you can just use the smoother to roll the sausage. This may be enough. You can use your ribbon again as well, so you know how long. We're almost there. So I'm just going to finish it off with the smoother. The smoother actually evens the whole length out much better than using your hand. There we go. So we're going to pop some more glue just underneath. All the way around. And then we're going to do exactly the same. So where we have our join at the back is where I shall begin to pop the tube in. I think it gives another fancy finish as well to your cake. And then where it meets, I'm just going to use the knife just to join that up. There we go. And now we're ready to make some doors and windows for our castle. This is where it really begins to take shape. So I thought I'd use a nice pale grey sugar paste. And for my castle, I'm going to use heart cutters. So these are heart cookie cutters. Now, you may not have hearts at home. You can do exactly the same with round cutters. And most people have got scone cutters at home. So it really doesn't matter what you use. Square cutters even, anything. So we're going to roll this out to about 2 millimeters, roughly in thickness. So we're going to start by cutting a smaller. Let's have a look. Yeah, let's have some small windows. So I'm going to do one small window with two slightly bigger. Just give them a wiggle, get a nice clean finish. So that's our windows. And we're going to leave those there just for a minute while we make the door. So I've got some nice pale brown sugar paste for my door. And we're going to do a nice wood effect on the door. So let's have a look. I'm probably going to go for this size. And then we're just going to cut away the bottom of our door. And then I'm going to use this tool. You could use the palette knife if you don't have one of these. This is a shell and blade tool. And it just gives a nice line. So we're going to do one down the middle because we've got two doors. Now, to get the wood effect, just going to do short strokes. There we go, one door. We just need to stick it in place. So if you just pop it over the other side, tiny bit of edible glue, don't need lots. And we're going to stick it in the middle. And this is going to set out where you're going to put the windows. So we're going to do the same with each window. Cut off the triangle at the bottom. Done that one wonky. It's a bit better. There we go. And then I'm going to mark a square. So give the effect of windows. There we go. So I'm going to start with the smaller one, which is going to go in the middle at the top. Move it over slightly. other two. Just going to pop them either side. Just going to turn it round. You want to make sure your windows are equally spaced apart. And make sure you've got them nice and straight. So there we have our windows. And then just to finish the windows and doors, we're going to put a brickwork effect around all three. So we're going to use our yellow sugar paste again. And we're going to roll a nice long sausage again. So we're going to start with the door. Just pop some glue all the way around the edge. And then I'm just going to pop this all the way round. And just cut it away at the bottom. And then the same with all three windows. I'm just rolling it a little bit thinner because the windows are a bit smaller. I don't want it as thick. Let's start with this one. There we go. And then to make the brickwork, I'm just going to press into it all the way round. And then the same with the windows. And then we just need the flower boxes that we're going to put all our red roses into. Let's make sure it's nice and kneaded. So we're going to make the flower boxes by starting off with a sausage shape again. And now we want to make it square. So I'm going to use the smoother. Let's cut a bit away. Just going to use the smoother to keep turning it and pressing it down. Until I've got a nice square. Perfect. And then we're going to measure underneath each of our window boxes. So I know I've got 2 slightly longer and a tiny one. And then just with your finger and thumb, just neaten the edge where you've cut. And then we can stick those in place. There we go. And now we're ready for the roses. So I'm going to use a mould. This is by Squire's Kitchen and it's fantastic. Really easy way of making roses just using sugar paste. But if you don't have one of those, don't forget, if you want to buy some little roses, there's lots of different icing roses that you can buy from cake decorating stores, larger ones. So whatever is easiest for you. And I've got my pre-made roses here, and this is from the mould that I'm going to show you very quickly how to use. So this is just a lovely bright red sugar paste. It's called True Red. Now you need to dust the mould really well with cornflour. Don't use icing sugar. Icing sugar would just make it stick. So I start with a cone shape and I pop it into the middle and then squash and then release. Now the beauty of this mould is you can make any sizes, lots of different sizes. Just use a smaller or a larger piece of sugar paste. So you can see it's got a little bit stuck. So just add a little bit more cornflour. Let's do a slightly, well, much bigger one. So it makes so many different sizes of roses. So now we're going to attach some of the roses to the cake. I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue on the top edge of our window boxes. And I'm going to use the smaller size roses as well as we're just going to pop them into that window box. And let's have a few that are trailing down as well. So you could just pop them. You can really have fun with this part. I'm going to pop a larger one underneath, just here. They're starting to come to life. I'm not going to worry too much about the board because we're going to be putting pebbles and probably some more roses around there. So the next thing we need to do is we need to tidy the bottom edge of our cake. And again, this will give it a nice professional look. And we're going to use the multi-ribbon cutter again. around the base of the cake and to make some bricks, just to give it a bit of a rustic feel. And you've already got your ribbon, so we need to roll our sugar paste out for the bottom. So I'm going to start with the sausage shape again. If you can roll a sausage, you're all right with this cake. And you can do this quite chunky as well because it is supposed to be brickwork. So I would say roughly 3 millimeters in thickness. Okay, so I'm going to cut away the edges. So I'm just going to make this a bit smaller now for our bricks. Again, if you don't have one of these, just use a palette knife. You can just do it by eye. So I'm going to pop on a smaller one, and I'm going to use part of the inner part just to make it a bit thicker. And then we're going to roll. I might get 2 strips out of here. Maybe not. So I'm just going to roll another one as well, because we can use this for the bricks that are randomly scattered. So get rid of all the waste. We don't need that. Okay. So we're ready to stick this around the base of our cake. So I'm going to put some glue. Notice I'm putting the glue on the cake, not on our strip. If I put it on the strip, I would just get into a complete mess. So I find this is the easiest way to do it. So I'm just going to turn that around. So if you've got a really messy part at the bottom of your cake, fantastic way of hiding that. Because we've got a slant to begin with, I'm just going to start it off with a bit of a slant so that it's going to just fit in nicely to begin with. And then try cut it at a slant to finish that off neatly as you can. And I think that really just finishes off your cake really nicely. So we're going to come back to our blade tool. Again, you can use the palette knife. And I'm going to create bricks. So just try and mark out as evenly as you can. I just go by eye, I don't measure. And just go all the way round. And then our random bricks. So the extra piece that I've cut here, I'm just going to cut into long bricks. Get another one out there. That's probably enough. So now we can tidy up all those messy patches that we don't like the look of, and we're just going to scatter the bricks all over the cake, very random. So I've got a bit of a messy bit there, I don't like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a brick pattern here. Nobody needs to know. Obviously, make sure you get your bricks nice and straight. And then I think one more thing, our door needs some handles. So I think I'm going to use a little bit of the yellow to create handles. So you could just do round handles, you could just do 2 rolled balls of sugar paste for your handles. But I think I'm going to use a blossom cutter. Now, if you didn't want to make roses, this is another idea actually, I've just thought about it. If you've got a blossom cutter, you could just cut out red blossoms. They would still look very pretty. And I think you'd still get the same look. It all depends what you've got at home, really. And then I think we'll create the path next. So what colour shall I use? Some yellow, maybe some grey. I think some grey stones. So I'm going to start by rolling some sugar paste balls, all different sizes. So you can see where I marked it earlier. So I'm just going to get one of my sugar paste balls and I'm going to pop it on there. I'm just going to use some cornflour. I've got really sticky fingers. And then I'm just going to squash it. So I'm just going to put a bit of glue. Let's put one there as well. I've got a messy part here. And we're just going to squash them. I think that's just enough. You don't need very many to create a really lovely, natural looking path to your castle. I'm just finishing off the look of my castle with some ribbon around the edge of the board, and it's just a 15mm ribbon, and you can just stick it with some double-sided sticky tape. And then I think all we need now is some wording. The easiest way to achieve wording on a cake, I think, especially for a child's cake, are these push easy mini cutters. So easy to use. So I'm going to show you on some sugar paste. So it's all rolled out ready. Just going to give it another, there we go. And we're going to cut out the name Belle. And you just push them out. Easy. And then going to arrange them on the board first. And then just stick them with some glue. There we go. A nice easy way to create the wording that you want for your cake. So there we have my finished castle cake, but I think it needs one more thing. So I'm going to add some glitter, and this is an edible glitter. You can get it in gold and silver. So we're just going to give it a little shake. Before you use it, just squeeze it onto some kitchen roll, and then I think we'll just pop some onto the door, the windows, the roses, and maybe just around the wording. And there we have my finished castle cake. So I'm now going to show you how to make Belle, our princess, for our castle cake. So I've started off with a round ball of modelling paste, and I'm just using a silver card just because it's easier for me to move it around when I'm making her. So I've started off with a golf ball size roughly of modelling paste. And next we're going to make her dress, the skirt part. So I've just got some yellow sugar paste for this part, and I'm going to use the largest cutter from the round circle cutters. I think most people have got these at home. So we're going to roll out the sugar paste as thin as we can get it, but obviously being sugar paste, you can't roll it quite as thin. So it's probably roughly 2 mil in thickness. So I'm going to cut out. Now I'm using a really large circle here, and you're probably thinking it's way too big. But in a minute, when we put it over the top of the dress, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so what we're going to do now is thin the edges very slightly. But again, because it's sugar paste, we can't do this too much. So I'm just going to use the edge of a paintbrush, and I'm just very lightly rolling it all around the edge. Okay, so it just gives a more material look to our dress. So I'm just going to pop just a tiny bit, you don't need a lot, of edible glue, and we're just going to rest this over the top. And then I'm just going to use the paintbrush just to lift the skirt up all the way around. Until you're happy with how the dress is sitting. I don't think that's too bad. So there we've got the start of Belle. So I'm going to use the blade side of this tool, and I'm just going to mark material lines. All the way round. Because Belle's dress has big scallops in it. So we're going to create this now using another cutter. So I'm going to try that size, see how that one works. So now we're going to build the dress up. So let's just have a look and see. That's quite nice. So I'm going to do exactly the same as before. Just roll around each scallop. Very gently. There we go. Tiny bit of glue. Again, don't do it all the way down. You don't need to. And then that way you can move it around to give it more life. And then just use your finger just to rub it down slightly. But I'm actually going to leave it with a few that are just sticking up very slightly. It just gives movement, I think, to the dress. And this is just sugar paste. So now we're going back to modelling paste, and this has been coloured with a paprika, or you could use an apricot or a tangerine colour. So we're going to roll it into a ball to begin with, really hard to make sure we get rid of all the creases, and then into a cone shape. And at this point I'm going to insert a cake pop stick, which I've already pre-cut, and then we can add the body. So I'm just going to pop a tiny bit of edible glue, and I'm going to put the cone shape facing down, and it's best to twist this on top until it goes through. There we go. And then you can just reshape it once it's on there. Now we're going to make the bodice part of her dress. So we're going back to our yellow sugar paste. And for this, I'm just going to cut a strip. It's not too bad. I'm just going to cut it off a little bit shorter. And then we can pop a little bit of glue all the way round. And just pop that on. Now, because it's a strip, it's not going to fit exactly at the back, but I'm not too worried. So I'm just going to cut a little bit away. I'm going to finish it. Because it's sugar paste, you can actually just manipulate it together. So there we have her body. So back to modelling paste for her arms. So we're going to roll it into a sausage. And then I'm going to cut it in half diagonally. and then I'm just going to pinch at the ends for her hands. So a little bit of glue just to stick her arms rather, in place. And again, pinch for the arm. Now I'm going to bend them slightly because she's going to be holding a rose. So I'm just going to press a little mark for the crease of her elbow. And this is going to help us to bend it when she has her rose. So around her shoulders, we're just going to make some long strips just to cascade. Let's do 2 over her shoulders. So I'm going to roll these into a long teardrop shape. I've got 2 of those, and then these are just going to start at the front of the dress and just drape over the top of her shoulder. There we go. And then I've got a rose, the same as I made earlier, which I'm just going to stick up here. I'm going to make a stem with some green sugar paste, and she's going to be holding the single rose. And then I'm just going to roll 2 tiny balls and then roll them into a cone shape. Just squeeze them down with my finger just to make a very simple leaf, which I'm going to place at the top. And then we need to try to get Belle to hold the rose. So if we just pop a little bit of glue onto her hands, I'm just going to pop it on the top and the other one on the top of her other hand. So there she is with her beautiful rose. So we're going back to the modelling paste for her head, and I've already modelled an oval shape for her head. So you need to hold it up to the body to make sure it's the right proportion. And I've pre-rolled 2 eyes, a little nose and 2 ears. So I'm going to start by sticking the head onto the body. So apply some glue around the cake pop stick and the top of her body. Now when you put this on, twist it on, otherwise you will lose the shape of the head. Perfect. So we're going to start by marking the eyes. So you could use the end of a paintbrush if you wanted. So we're going to start with the eyes. Tiny bit of glue inside the holes, and then we'll pop in 2 round balls of sugar paste or modelling paste, whatever you have, and just press with your finger, and then we'll pop her nose in the middle and just press it on. And then I've got this tool here by Gem. There are other tools, you could use half a straw, and it's got this smiley face on one half of it, and you just poke it in, give a nice happy face. And before I go any further, I've got some dust, and this is just a pink edible dust, and I'm just going to brush a small amount onto her cheeks. There we go. Now for the ears, I've got the 2 small balls, and I'm just going to press an indent into both of them and attach either side. Now when you're attaching things like ears, maybe look in the mirror, see where your ears are. There we go. And the other one, I'm just going to check. Yeah. And always make sure they're level. So to do the eyes, I've got some chestnut coloured sugar paste, and I'm just going to roll 2 very tiny dots for her eyes. Very hard to roll, very tiny dots, and just pop a bit of glue. And then with your finger, just squash them down. There we go. So now we need to make her lovely long hair. So I'm going to use the sugar paste, the same that I've used for her eyes. Now we want to create lovely flowing hair for Belle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the sugar paste to the length that I roughly need for her hair. So you're going to have nice long hair, and then we're just going to push it down. Let's give it a little roll, I think. Now it's going to look a bit strange, but what you do with hair is you build it up. Okay, so I'm going to use the blade tool to now mark lots of lines in Belle's hair, and at the ends just push into it so it almost cuts some of the strands. All the way to the top. And then we're going to add some glue just to the back of her head to begin with, because we want to be able to play. I think that's going to be too long, so let's just cut a bit away. If you do it into a semicircle at the top, that's about right. So now what we're going to do is just manipulate the sugar paste onto her head. And we want to bring part of it coming round. Just going to cut a longer length and just bring her hair round to the front. And then what you can do is just make parts of it curl up at the back, and it just adds a bit of life. There we go. Okay. So at the front, we're going to create a nice sweeping fringe at the front. So we're going to roll 2 long teardrop shapes. Okay. And then I'm just going to try it out here. So I want them to come round. So my paste is quite sticky, so I've not actually put any glue on that part at all. And then the same on the other side. And we're going to go to the tool so I'm just using this just to mark the hair and also push it in a little bit more. So you can really shape it once it's on the head. You may even want the head to dry overnight before you do the hair, and then that way you can actually play with it a little bit more. And then on the sides, I'm just going to roll another long, thin bit of sugar paste and another one. And we're going to create a couple of curls just on the side of her hair. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of glue just down the side of her ears. And I'm going to stick that on. And then what I'm going to do is twist it. Bit off and just twist it, and the same on the other side, and then again just use your fingers just to twist the end. And it creates a really cute curl. we go. So I think all we need now is some eyebrows. Two eyebrows. This is an edible ink pen, really handy. And if you want to add on a couple of eyelashes, and there is one more thing. She has a bun, so I'm going to roll a round ball and just pop it on the top of her head like so, and then we're going to use the tool just to mark the strands of her hair. All the way round. And then I think she needs some yellow just around that bun. Just roll a nice thin bit of yellow sugar paste that matches her dress. Tiny bit of glue. I don't think we need very much. All the way round, and then just drape and finish it underneath. There we are, and there we have our Princess Belle. I think all Belle needs now is a spritz with gold edible glitter all around her beautiful dress. And now we're ready to pop her onto our cake. So I'm going to pop some edible glue, just a little bit in the middle. And carefully place her in the middle of her castle. And to finish the whole design off, I have a beast. I wasn't going to attempt to make him. You can, of course, buy all the cake toppers if you have a look. But I think he really does finish our design off. Now, of course, it's such a versatile design. Let me show you. This is another cake that I've made. Exactly the same way, slightly different flowers, different colour princess, but you can match it to any of your favourite princesses. So I hope you've enjoyed watching.